History of Aviation podcast with Derrick, Beeler, David Rowe, and David Gorman.
All right. Once again on the History of Aviation podcast. And guys, we're on episode 49. How about that?
How did that happen?
It snuck up on us, didn't it?
Boy, it did.
Man, that's great. That's a pretty cool number. We got a better number coming up after that, though, right?
We do, and we're just going to reach out to the listeners and drop us a line, guys, and let us know what you think. What airplane you think should be the 50th episode?
You got to celebrate, right? Pump it up a little bit. We've gone through some great ones in the past, gone some pretty deep reviews on some aircraft, and it's been civilian and military and Coast Guard and all kinds of rotor craft, and I don't guess we've done any hovercraft yet, have we?
No.
But we've done some great military planes. We got a great one tonight, don't we?
Absolutely. A legendary one that everybody seems to love, but nobody seems to want.
Well, I want one. I'm keeping my eye open and my checkbook handy just in case they have one come available. I don't guess we'll ever see one of these on the private air show circuit, will we?
Not likely, since literally the United States military is the only people who have it. And I don't see them letting anybody else have it anytime soon.
Well, what are we talking about tonight?
It's called the Warthog.
Cool name.
Warthog.
Cool name,
Yes.
cool plane.
It is. The actual name is the A-10 Thunderbolt II, named after the P-47 Thunderbolt for its ground attack capabilities. And that is what this aircraft is the premier ground attack aircraft in the world today.
Well, it just feels like such a purpose-built aircraft, and it's one that is saved countless lives, dependable, there when you need it, packs an incredible punch. I always hear that this plane was built around a gun, that the gun was designed first. We'll maybe break that down here a little bit, but you know it when you see it, and it's fascinating. I've loved watching them for, my gosh, I think the first one I saw was maybe 1978. So it's been around a long, long time, but so have I. So,
well, yeah, that's part of the deal is, 50 years of this, and it's still going strong. It's gone through major revisions and upgrades, and kind of like the B-52, it's just sticking around because there is nothing better at the job that it does.
Yeah, there's no replacement. It adds some things that were just really intriguing when I first heard of it. The titanium bathtub. I remember hearing about that. I'm like, what the heck is that? And you start hearing about, how it was built to withstand all kinds of pounding. And this was not a supersonic plane. It was not fast. It was designed to do a specific job, and they knew it was going to get the hell beat out of it. So you wanted to make sure those pilots survived. A lot of redundant features in this thing, and just a tremendous gun platform, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole thing right there. It is a gun platform. It was built around the autocannon, and it's there to, the whole design purpose was to stop tanks from coming into your territory, specifically the USSR's tanks in Europe. That was the original design philosophy, was we need an aircraft that's low, slow, close to the action, and can stop the tanks from overrunning our troops. And that was where this aircraft originated from.
Well, and this wasn't just about putting fire on that tank. It was a particular type of fire, this depleted uranium round. Shall we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was reading up about it, and these are 30 millimeter shells. So they are quite large, extremely large, and they use a depleted uranium core. And what's unique about that depleted uranium is it's a very dense material. It carries a whole lot of kinetic energy into the tank's armor when it hits. And this was the interesting part. It tends to get sharper as it goes through the armor. So the uranium kind of gets thinner and triangular shaped, and it kind of punches through the armor because of that density of its metal. It's really a unique way. It punches right through it. The thing I was reading said like tungsten steel is a more dense metal, but when it hits armor, it turns into a ball. It doesn't penetrate the way the depleted uranium does. And when you've got a gun that is spitting out 50, 60 rounds a second, and it's punching into the side of a tank, and that depleted uranium is cutting holes through it, you're making cheese out of that armor.
Absolutely. And, those guys, I don't know what that must have been like to be a tank crewman being attacked by these guys in the Gulf War, because whether they could see it or not, it was holy hell being unleashed upon them. This built around the gun, and what a gun it was. We were talking about upgrades over the years, and we always see that. You have an airplane that's been around for 50 years, but I mean that feature was on the first A-10, first operational A-10, and stayed with it throughout the entire production run, right?
Correct. Yeah, that was it. It's a giant gun hidden inside that aircraft. You see the nose. You've got the gun sticking out the front, but that's only like 5% of the gun. There is so much more behind it. There's pictures of the gun sitting next to a Volkswagen Beetle to give you a size comparison. That's how big this gun is. It's literally the size of a Beetle that you ride around in.
Wow. So this plane, developed, as you said, to destroy Russian armor. And at the time of its development and early full-scale testing and then deployment and everything, that was a real threat over in Europe. And fortunately, that part of the Cold War ended, and the A-10 was not used in combat, I don't believe, and any time up before the Gulf War. Dave, I'm drawing a blank on if it saw any service before then.
The Gulf War is the first service that I see where it was actually used in combat.
Yeah, I apologize. That's what I mean when I say service, that it served in combat.
Correct. Yeah. The first thing that I'm reading is that it was the Gulf War. Operation Desert Storm was where it was first in combat and proved its worth.
This is another one of those aircraft that crew members were incredibly loyal to. And I mean, these things, Thunderbolt 2, whatever, everybody knows it's a Warthog. It's ugly. It's mean. It's got a bad bite. But, they were proud of it and remained proud. And, there was a real esprit de corps around these squadrons and these troops. And that was fantastic. But it was the people on the ground that were saved by these aircraft. And there's stories, there are videos, there's scenes of, that you can read about in books and magazines and online, talking about people who are pinned down and they've got snipers who are holding them down, and they call it an A-10, and it just unleashes, that big gun and just chews up the enemy. And, what a great feeling it would have to be saved by something like that. I was watching a video yesterday, and they said, if you can hear the gun, you're not the target. I'm like, well, what the heck? Think about that, because it's happening so fast that if you hear the gun being fired, it's not coming at you. I'm like, well, small consolation, because I think I'd be jumping every time.
Well, that's 100% true. And the gun, speaking of taking out a target, the gun isn't the only thing. This aircraft has 11 hard points on the wings and underneath it, and it can carry up to 16,000 pounds of weaponry. So, I mean, it's not just a gun. It's got bombs. It's got missiles. It can carry rockets. So, I mean, it's multi-platform, multi-purpose.
Four hard points on each wing, and then some fuselage attach points too, I think. So,
yep, exactly. 3 under the fuselage is what I've got. And, so we're talking Hydra 70 rockets, AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missiles for self-defense, AGM-65 Maverick air-to-ground missiles, And then it can carry just your regular iron bomb, the Mark 80s or Mark 77 incendiary bombs. So it goes on: cluster bombs, paveway, laser guided bombs, JDAM, wind corrected munitions dispensers. So I mean, it's everything that's out there. It can pretty much carry something.
And it served in so many roles, but basically, it is a protector, it is an aggressor, it's a defender, all those things. And I mentioned seeing the first one of these I ever saw was maybe in '77, I guess. And I'd gone to Myrtle Beach with family, and there was a water slide, and that was when water slides were, pretty brand new. At least for us, they were. That was a big deal to go out to the beach and go up on a water slide. Well, I go up there the first or second time, and I look across the highway, and I'm looking down at Myrtle Beach Air Force Base. And I'm like, holy crap, look at this. And I got a great view, no camera, of course, but they had A-10s, and they were doing touch and goes. And I stood up there, and the guy who's at the top, directing traffic down the slide is getting a little bit irritated with this 15-year-old kid, because I'm just standing there watching the planes, and he's like, hey, buddy, move on. I'm like, oh, come on. Yeah. But they were awesome. And just watching the maneuverability, that always strikes me when you see a plane wheeling and dealing in the air. And, those guys were banking and cranking and around the circuit at Myrtle Beach doing touch and goes. And I was in heaven. I was like, what is that? That is so, I mean, I knew what it was, but it was so cool to actually see one. And then just, hearing, it's got a pretty distinctive, whiny,
yes.
Roaring engine and everything. So, or two of them. So really cool to see and hear.
Well, your story is almost exactly like mine, other than the fact I wasn't on a giant slide. Myrtle Beach was the first time I saw one of these in the air, and we were out on the beach, and 3 of them came flying over the beach in sort of a loose formation, just turning. And we're all going, look at this, because they were low and slow. And that, like you said, that whine as it came around the corner, and we were just loving it. And then, we were there for a week, and we saw them every couple of days. They were flying over the beach.
It's just like that, except I think I was in a 2-piece suit. So,
well, here's the interesting thing that I heard. So Myrtle Beach, that is actually the first unit to achieve full combat readiness, was the 354th Tactical Fighter Wing at Myrtle Beach Air Force Base in South Carolina in October of 1977. So what you saw was them working up to operational capabilities. That's what they were doing.
That's kind of what I thought I was doing on the water slides too. So I never became operational. I was more dysfunctional. A few some burns, some concrete burns. Those things were not fiberglass yet. They were really smooth.
They were metal.
So you usually left a little bit behind on that, but yes. I'm not saying those A-10 guys had it easier than me, but they had more success. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, and then, this of course has been a regular performer for a long, long time at air shows, and oftentimes not just solo. Sometimes you have formation flights of 4 coming by, and it's such a sleek looking plane, and all the things that the critics have to say about it being kind of outdated or whatever. It still cuts a striking figure in the skies. It's fun.
Definitely.
I love watching it. And I have taken 1,000 pictures of the underside of A-10s flying, because they've got that false cockpit, that false canopy painted underneath because it can be disorienting the way this plane, by mission expectations, wheeling and banking in the air and turning and diving and all that kind of stuff. Somebody who's up against it trying to target it might not know which way is up. So they've got that false canopy painted on the bottom of it, which always intrigued me.
Well, and the other thing is that's literally where that titanium tub is situated. So if they're shooting at that, they're just shooting into that tub, which is protecting the pilot. So, I mean, it's great camouflage. I mean, it's a great way to protect the pilot, because they're not getting through that tub unless they've got something really big.
How many A-10s were built?
716. They were built up until 1984. So it was a long time ago when the last one was built.
So the youngest one is 40 years old.
Pretty much.
Think
Now,
about that for a moment.
exactly. But they have all gone through everything that's flying today has gone through a modernization program. So they should technically be the AC-10 version. So they've all had new wings installed because apparently, even during production, they knew of a weakness in the spar on the wing, apparently. And, after so many thousand hours of flight time, those wings started to fail. And they actually had to go through an upgrade scenario where they basically built new wings. I believe Boeing was the one that built the new wings for it. And they've all been re-winged to, correct this flaw in the wing.
You mentioned Boeing in here, and this plane was originally designed by Fairchild.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Which doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Republic, I guess, was maybe a division that got swallowed up by Fairchild. Is that correct? Maybe in my
I
history
believe that
there?
is correct. Yes.
And it's always odd to me, and it's sad to think about some of these companies with these rich histories of aviation development and incredible planes, and then they just get swallowed up. They go away. Boeing, I don't. Is Boeing? You said they were involved in upgrading the wings or whatever. Are they the successor, perhaps, to Fairchild and Republic?
I would assume so at this point. But I mean, Grumman Aerospace in 1987 was part of the modernization program, one of the earlier ones. So this plane has had many hands involved in it. So as far as who has it now, I'm not 100% sure, but Boeing definitely was involved with the modernization of the wings.
Well, it's interesting too, because the knock, if there is a knock, I don't know that it's a knock at all, but I mean, for a long time, there have been critics of this aircraft, and the type of mission that it flies, the fact that it's not glamorous, or whatever, low and slow and not supersonic and not nuclear capable, I don't think, in any way. Maybe
I don't believe so.
Yeah. But, there have been efforts to try to get rid of this aircraft. Over the years, but it has a role. It's served its role, and shown time and time again that thank God we had the A-10.
Well, and as a matter of fact, they have tried to kill this aircraft most of its life. The Air Force didn't really want it in the first place, but from what I was reading, the Army was building the Cheyenne helicopter, and it was going to take over that close support role that the Air Force wanted to keep. And so they went in and went, 100% in on the A-10 to get it up and functional so that they could maintain that. But ever since then, it's gone through. No, we're going to replace it with the F-16. And that went away. Well, the F-35 is going to replace it. Well, that's still up in the air. As a matter of fact, as late as 2016, they were talking about some off-the-shelf platforms, the AT-6 Wolverine, the A-29 Super Tucano, and a Textron Airland Scorpion jet as replacements for the A-10 as low cost for smaller conflicts, not like big giant war situations, but like smaller, insurgent type things. So, I mean, they are constantly looking at ways to replace this aircraft, but yet there's nothing on the drawing board that we know of that can do what it does.
I thought it was interesting too. You mentioned earlier that the only operator of this plane has been the U.S.
Correct.
And that is, that does happen with some aircraft, but this is an interesting thing to me. Why do you think that is? Is it because of that gun in the nose being something that was pretty proprietary and something we wanted to maintain control over and access to, and didn't want it falling into the wrong hands?
Maybe so. I mean, I know the Russians have some, autocannon type weapons that are, super fast firing and, lots of range and what have you. But, you know, whether or not this one is in an airplane that flies, the other stuff that I've seen are installed on ships or ground based. So maybe that is the key, is that this is, an airborne weapon that nobody else has the same.
Well, the Soviet Union had a comparable plane, that Sukhoi 25, the Frogfoot,
Correct.
which if I remember, I think I first started hearing about that perhaps in Afghanistan or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, looking at that, I'm like, that thing just looks weak. I'd love to see the A-10 and the Frogfoot, facing off in competition. I don't think it would be very close. I mean, similar mission, but there's something about sitting behind that gun and in that titanium bathtub that's got to make you feel, incredibly powerful.
Well, and safe. I mean, if you're going to have somebody in that close, with ground fire, you want to make sure your pilot feels like they're going to go in and come out on the other side, even with some aircraft damage, with the redundancies you were talking about earlier, it's a super strong aircraft. So the pilots know I've got a good chance of getting in and getting out and getting back home.
Well, you mentioned about redundancy and damage, and there was a story from the Gulf War. I did not get a chance to look it up, but I'm hoping that you did, guessing that you probably did. There was a female Air Force pilot who her plane was incredibly damaged, with lots and lots of holes and shrapnel damage, engine damage.
The
control
pictures
damage.
are amazing. It's just full of holes. You can actually see, it looks like she flew right through a stream of bullets because they go like a stripe up the side of the fuselage. It's just incredible.
And it brought her home.
Exactly. I do have the story here. It was during Iraqi freedom, April the 7th of 2003. Captain Tim Campbell was flying over Baghdad during the 2003 invasion, and it was flak damage. It damaged one engine and crippled the hydraulic system. Well, the interesting thing about the A-10's hydraulics is it has two separate systems. Each engine drives a redundant system. So if you lose one engine, the other engine will take over and run your hydraulics. As a matter of fact, if you lose both hydraulic systems, there is a manual system. There's cables inside the aircraft that you can fly. From what I understand, it's really, really hard to fly because there, you don't have any help turning and, making the ailerons and, what have you move. You've got to manually move it yourself, but it can be done. So anyway, she was just shot up, crippled her hydraulics. She requiring the stabilizer and flight controls to be operated during what they call manual reversion. That's that manual, using the stick. She flew for nearly an hour and landed safely. And then, like I said, go look up the pictures of this aircraft. It is shot to pieces.
Well, I just remember seeing that and thinking that, is that scary if you're a pilot and you see that? Or does that make you think, thank God I'm in the A-10 because that thing brought her home?
Well, it's kind of like the B-17. I mean, you see the pictures of those things shot up and they brought people home. There's just some aircraft have a strength that's unlike anything else.
Yeah.
So, some of the things that I read about it, it has a honeycomb structure that kind of gives it an extra strength. The skin is not load bearing. So if you shoot through the skin, it just, you can just replace it. It's not the strength, it's spars and, other things that are built around it to, make it strong. All of the controls are outside, of the engines. The ailerons are far out. They're like 50%. So you've got really great control out there. So even if you get those damaged, they're huge. And so it's easy to make the aircraft turn. It's just lots of, well thought out design work. The fact that you've got two engines mounted up high, That keeps them out of the FOD, foreign objects and debris getting up into them. It also, because of the way the twin tail is situated, it reduces the heat signature so that, if you've got any heat-seeking missiles, it's going to cut down on them reading your aircraft because the heat signature is smaller. So lots of really smart design work into the construction of this aircraft.
Who is the manufacturer of that power plant?
General Electric TF34GE 100 turbofans. And the fact that it's a turbofan means that it's not a turbojet, so it's a not as hot engine to begin with.
Gotcha.
Although I did read that some people feel that it's a little underpowered, that it probably could have used a little bit stronger engine. But, I mean, if you see those guys at an air show and they come diving in and they yank and that plane goes whoop and it just goes off in another direction, it's pretty impressive with power it's got.
Yeah, it seems plenty powerful to me.
Yeah. But I did read a couple of things that said that they felt that the engines were a little underpowered.
Well, give them what they want, folks.
Exactly.
So I had another experience also in South Carolina in the late 70s, maybe early 80s. My brother lived close to, he lived in Sumter, which is right near Shaw Air Force Base. And that was F-4s and F-16s at that point. But nearby there was a firing range, target range. And Bob somehow was able to get some passes, and we got to go watch in the little grandstand area as some A-10s that were either from Myrtle Beach or maybe from McIntyre Air National Guard Base. Perhaps I don't remember if that's where they were based or not, but there were some A-10s that came in, and I was very excited about seeing them on a gunnery range. They had these big cloth targets, but they had some type of shotgun type of shell instead of the depleted uranium. But we still got to hear the whir of that gun, which you hear in videos sometimes, that high-speed whir of the gun.
Right.
It was not firing the big stuff. But it's still pretty cool to see.
Oh, yeah. Would absolutely love to see one of these up close in action. We're not that close, but,
I'll have to show you the pictures that I didn't take.
Well, some things can only live in your memory.
Who knew? Well. So, I also want to mention this episode was suggested, this aircraft for us to feature was suggested by our friend Darren, who lives down here in the Knoxville area and a great photographer and friend of the show and longtime listener. Maybe a first-time caller, we'll see. But he takes some great pictures, and Hills and Hollers is his handle, and he's definitely worth checking out. He's given me a lot of tips on photography. When I remember to listen to them, I do pretty well. So thank you for all that, but also the suggestion for the A-10. Hard to believe we hadn't gotten to this one yet.
Well, we just saw it in Louisville here recently, a couple of weeks ago, and they sure do make for a nice flyby.
Well, they do. They're kind of ungainly looking. They look the twin tail, the engines that you said that are raised and everything. They just have there's no mistake in what this aircraft is.
Yeah, because nothing looks like it. There's nothing out there that looks anything close to it.
So that is definitely a sense of pride with those pilots and crew members. So cool plane.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's pretty amazing. I had a couple of other interesting things that I discovered about it. So speaking about those engines, did you realize this aircraft has its own APU inside?
I'm not at all surprised. Of course it does.
Well, because it's it's meant to work up close to the front lines. So you're in situations where you don't have, the full capabilities of a typical airport at hand. You don't have, all the equipment on there. So this thing has to be able to start on its own. So they built an APU inside. There's a little exhaust nozzle right below the engines in between. And that was something I did not realize, that it carried its own APU to get started.
Raised engines are also good to be clear of FOD and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some unimproved areas.
Exactly. It's short field at I think what was it, 1,000 feet that it needed to take off. It's a very short takeoff and landing type aircraft. So those big wings, they gather a lot of lift really quick.
Typically, when we have seen this aircraft fly, it's usually in that gray scheme. But and listeners, you can't see. David has a picture behind him that I'm going to guess he took that picture.
I did.
Of an A-10 with a kind of a two-tone olive, dark green, forest green maybe on top, and then the gray. A few years ago here in Knoxville, they had a A-10 that had like a Vietnam era. What do they call that? The sand and spinach.
Yes.
Maybe kind of coloration or whatever. That thing was fantastic looking. So it's always cool to see the ones that are painted up with different unit historical markings and things like that, which are cool. There are a couple of squadrons that have had snakes painted on the nose, and always great to get some close-in shots of those guys flying by too.
Well, and that's one of the cool things. This aircraft is kind of known for its nose art. It has hogs, it has snakes, it has teeth. It's a great airplane just to see, even if it's, just a gray plane with a great nose job. So that's always cool to see.
Definitely.
Here's another thing that I learned that I did not know. Apparently the gun is the materials that they used for the propellant in the gun, those gases when the gun is firing. And like I said, it fires about 50 to 60 rounds a second. And the drum inside of it carries like 1,700 shells. So as those things are coming out, one of the early problems that they developed was that the gases from the gun, from the shells, would go back and choke out the engines. The engines didn't get enough oxygen to run. So all this, they had to do something about it. So if you look underneath the A-10 at the nose, there's a little scoop underneath the gun that kind of catches some of that gases and funnels it out of the way. They also changed the chemical composition of the shells to help alleviate that. But the biggest thing that they did is they had to, anytime the gun is being fired, the starter on those jet engines fires continuously. So it's like, the spark plug is firing at the same time as the gun is firing to make sure that any of those gases coming back that kill the engine, it'll start up immediately. And that's something I was totally unaware of, that was an issue that the aircraft had. And as a side note, some of those gases get up on the canopy and fog the canopy. So they had to put a system of water, like a windshield wiper has, that squirts water up onto the screen so that it washes away the chemical residue that's left over. So, that gun is causing problems to the aircraft as it's flying.
Wow.
Yeah, but they weren't going to walk away from that gun. They're just going to, solve this problem. All right, let's get the gases directed elsewhere. Okay, let's wash the windshield. But we're keeping the gun.
Gun's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. And here's a third thing that I learned. The power of that gun firing, if you were to fire it continuously, it has the same force as one of the engines pushing in the back. So it kind of cancels each other out. But because they only fire for a second or two, it doesn't cause the aircraft to slow up significantly. But if you were just to lay on it and shoot, it would make the A-10 slow down and stall, apparently. That it has that much power going out the front that it negates one of the engines in the back.
All right. Well, I'm just going to tell you, YouTube, here I come, because there's got to be a video.
Oh, yeah.
There's got to be a video of that being tested. I got to find that. So,
yeah, that was pretty amazing. When I read that, I was like, really? Okay, that's some pretty powerful, gun firing out there. You can't shoot a gun that long in the, it'll melt the barrels. and there's 7 barrels to this the Avenger rotary cannon. So I mean, it's spinning and it's spitting out shells super fast.
Absolutely amazing. And how many A-10s you have there on airfoil, David Rowe?
Oh, I have got quite a few. I have been lucky enough to see it at several air shows. I have seen it at, on the ramp at several airports. There's probably, 40 or 50 shots in my website of it, particularly Rome, Wings Over North Georgia. They tend to always have one there. So that's where I've got the picture of the camouflaged A-10 that I've got for my backdrop tonight. It's from Wings Over North Georgia Air Show. So they're out there. You can see them. As a matter of fact, I think there's at least about 280 that are still in service today, between the Air Force and the Air National Guard. So we started out with 716 and we're down under 300 now. And, attrition is slowly taking them away, and, time and fatigue is going to slowly take them away. So somebody better get on the ball and design something up that's the equal to the A-10 Warthog.
Well, we know that somebody's got something in the works, and I'll be sad to see this thing go. But in the meantime, I sure do enjoy seeing it and have, as we said, for almost 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I was reading that up to 2040 was the possible life extension. So we've still got a few years that it can stick around, but I know the Air Force is definitely looking at replacing it with something, F-35 or whatever. But so enjoy it while you can, because they won't be around forever.
Does the F-35 know that?
Well,
it's like, wait a minute, fellas.
As far as I know, the F-35 pilots are not being trained for ground attack. Have you ever seen or read anything about the F-35 actually, ground attack? Can it loiter as long as the A-10 can over a battlefield at 1,000 feet or,
Why would you risk that plane?
Exactly.
Doing that kind of stuff.
At the money that's being spent for that aircraft, just build a bigger, better A-10 and, make it do what it's been doing before.
Seems to make sense.
Dave Gorman.
We shall see.
Dave Gorman, you got some stuff going on there. Just come back from Louisville. You guys did. So.
Oh man, we had a great time up at the Thunder over Louisville show, the preliminary. They got some horse race thing that happens up in Louisville every year. Apparently, I can't remember what it is, but thank goodness they have a big air show just to get people in the right mood, apparently. And that's fantastic. They have a fireworks show, and I know Dave will tell us a little bit about his experience with that. But it's a free show. It's right there down on the waterfront. And I took over 1,000 pictures. I can't help it. There's a B-52 up there. There's a UPS 747 coming over, click, 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 click. I can't help it. Man, it was good to be out there shooting shots again. And if all goes well, I'm going to be down in the Atlanta area this weekend to see some more aircraft flying. They've got a show down in Atlanta. So looking forward to getting back into the season, getting it into full swing. So some pictures of my own that I really haven't posted a whole lot of, but some video of B-52 and video of 747s and some other aircraft from Louisville on my YouTube channel, Gormania.
Definitely good. And all things History of Aviation channel you can find in the description below. And we got the Facebook group page, Dave.
Yeah, we'd love to have you share some of your comments and thoughts after an episode or even before an episode. And I'll tell you what, we mentioned about some of these paint jobs on A-10s. It'd be kind of fun if our listeners might, if you have any pictures of different paint jobs, why don't you share them, post them, ones that you've taken, okay? If you have some that you could share, it'd be kind of cool to see how many different patterns of camouflage or unit history that might be present in our camera files there.
And we're wanting listener input as well on our episode number 50. We're turning 50.
Oh my gosh, that part is crazy. So I can't wait to hear what some folks think we ought to do. I will say that I will veto any suggestion of having Bruce as a special guest. This is a celebration. This is a celebration, and so I'll celebrate talking about him, but not talking with him, if that's okay.
Yeah, you can go to.
Bruce and I will be riding to Atlanta this weekend, so I'll hear all about it.
But yeah, if you have any suggestion for number 50, go to any of those links below. Drop us a line. Tell us what you think would be the best for number 50, and we'll may the best win.
Absolutely,
that's how it works.
Something interesting.
We'll break it down, and sure appreciate everybody tuning in and checking us out, and keep those cards and letters coming. And see you for number 50.
There we go. Appreciate it, guys.
Great deal.
For David Rowe, Dave Gorman, I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for listening to the History of Aviation podcast.
This is Joe Morse. You are listening to the History of Aviation podcast with Derrick Beeler, David Rowe, and David Gorman.